Dano is Korean, Confucius is Korean, Chinese character was invented by Korea, etc. We've heard a story through YouTube and other medias that fake news we've never heard of have been circulated on Chinese news and on the internet. However, Chinese internet users have laughed at Korea by saying that all the universe belongs to Korea. Today, I'm going to introduce a really rare Chinese news that gives pungent advice to Chinese people who were deluded by these fake news and know false information as true. Related news came up through a platform called UC Headline that provides various news. First, I will introduce the related news. Next, we will get to know how Chinese internet users thought about these issues in the past, and their comments will be told later. The title of the news is Korea has never said that everything in the world is Korean. Well, let's look into the backgrounds. In 2019, South Korea listed Yuga-seowon as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In fact, all the news for past 10 years that South Korea has been robbed a lot of heritage from China are misleading. It is just an unfounded rumor. Although many Chinese people felt uncomfortable with Korea's active trying on World Heritage listing, but we all know that listing is not a competition between nations, but a protection for a nation's civilization. News says something belongs to Korea is fake and distorted because Korean never said that. In the case of listing Yuga-seowon, previously mentioned, Korea announced in advance of its plan to list 9 Yuga-seowon before the listing. Yuga? Isn't this Chinese? Chinese will react like this and will be angry again. In fact, the Korean government is very active by rolling up its sleeves for cultural heritage listings. Chinese internet users are on the edge after they heard the related news and keep rubbing that something belongs to Korea in. Eventually, these situations make a mockery meme came out on Chinese internet which says all the world or all the universe belongs to Korea. The beginning of this situation is an article, Is Dano Festival Became a Foreign Cultural Heritage? Published in the People's Daily in May 2005. They cited a posting by Professor Oh Byung-an, who is renowned as folklore scholars at Liaoning University. He wrote that a country in Asia is trying to list our Dano Festival to their cultural heritage, and this is very reliable news. And people got to know that the country in Asia is South Korea. The news made a big aftermath, and Chinese media began to report day after day saying that the Dano War had begun between Korea and China. The public got upset and various media aired daily special reports on the theme of protecting Dano. Akyang City, the place where Q Yuan threw himself into the river, also held a large-scale signing campaign to protect Dano. These actions to protect the culture of their own ancestors struck entire China region. However, a twist took place in less than a week of the incident. What Korea tried to list for was Gangneung Dano Festival, which is Korean local fair. Well, it contains 2 letters, Dano, but it was completely different from Chinese Dano. And it has absolutely no relation to Kyuyuan. In the end, the actions that took place in China to protect Dano ended up in unnecessary behavior. However, since the internet was not developed well at the time, this rumor continued to be spread among the people, and it resulted in a misunderstanding in people's hearts till now. 1 year after this incident, Korea applied for 동의보감, a book of Oriental medicine, and 석전대제, a ceremonial rite performed twice annually to honor Confucius, as cultural heritage listing. This news triggered misunderstandings again, and ridiculous fake news like Oriental medicine belonged to Korean, and Confucius was Korean popped up and spread all over China once again. Because of these fake news, about 20 unfounded words spread at the moment, like the Sun Jung-shan, Lee Shi-jin, Ju Yun-jang, and Yao Ming are Korean. And the 4 major inventions and terracotta warriors belong to Korea. They even said that American swimmer Michael Phelps is Korean, and Shakyamuni is also Korean too. They just tripping on what Korean said. They made false rumor which says something belongs to Korea to drop the name of these Mongols, which is totally wrong. A news said that Korean professor in Seoul National University had argued to list Chinese character as Korean cultural heritage, as well as such absurd and ridiculous incidents include the Dano festival thing in 2005. The news reported Professor Jung-soo Park in Seoul National University insisted that Chinese characters were invented by Korea so that they have the right to list it as Korean cultural heritage in 2007. But it turned out there was any movement to add the Chinese character for heritage listing. Moreover, in 2018, a rumor had spread which said that Korea was trying to get rid of Chinese calligraphy and Japanese calligraphy by listing Korean one. It was a cannot either. Of course, some Korean scholars and media are claiming that Go and soccer originate from Korea, but the mainstream media and Korean government never reported these as worthless news or showed any reaction. Therefore, it is not worth it to regard fake news as real one. Well, to be honest, I can tell that Korea is one of the best countries promoting their culture. Korea have tried to do their best for listing their culture on UNESCO for a long time ago. Finally, Korea is able to possess more than 10 kinds of intangible cultural heritage, such as Gangneung Dano Festival, Arirang, Pansori, and Jongmyo-je래 now. Also, the things that Koreans meet every day in their daily life, such as kimchi and ondol, a heating system, have been proudly listed by the Korean government as UNESCO intangible cultural properties. Especially, the Korean government has not only made such moves, but meticulously prepared to list comfort women documentaries on the UNESCO World Records Heritage by releasing related images and videos of them. They have been prepared for since 2014, collecting and listing data from the country, China, Southeast Asia, and Japan, trying to list them on UNESCO under the jurisdiction of the Korea Cultural Heritage Administration. Those whole process got a result. It listed in UNESCO World Records Heritage. This made people respect their own nation. Through the previous examples, we've got to know that Koreans cherish and value their own things and show their future generation made out of it directly. It is hard to estimate how Koreans quick on their feet when disseminate their own culture, how deep is their love toward their own nation and culture. But I believe that Koreans have more abilities to show their own things to the world than Chinese. However, China considers Korea's efforts trivial things, and they think that Koreans are always making a fuss with petty things. They laugh at Korean listed kimchi, which we eat for side of meals in daily life. But after the listings succeed, Chinese didn't seem like to care it at all, but they tried to list their things behind our back. This sweet lemon mechanism rationalizes himself when there are objects he can get or desires he can't achieve is prevalent seriously in Chinese society. If not, there is no reason to be so sensitive to these Korean movements. Well, China's efforts to applying for listing could never fall behind Korea, to be honest. China currently ranks second place in the world with 52 items listed in UNESCO Natural and Cultural Heritage. Besides, there are more than 1,300 items only on cultural heritage all over China region. But it will take years of time and a lot of effort to list all of these. Also, listing is different from the patent right of an object. It doesn't mean that Korea has some kind of exclusive right on cultural heritage just because Korea listed them at first time. All countries or all heritage, even the same or different, have the right to be listed in UNESCO. In the same vein, there is no reason to argue with the case that Korea has listed a culture similar to that of China. Cultural heritage belongs to entire mankind, and we should know the purpose of listing is to pass it down to future generations, does not provoke competition between nations. Also, I worry managed toward cultural heritage in China, which only listed by Chinese government but isn't protected at all. Since listing itself does not mean that the culture is directly protected and immediately pass it down, they should pay more attention to this. If China keeps neglecting Korea's efforts to apply for listing because they still have a large land, rich products, and have a long history, it seems clear that they will become the hero of the story of the hare and the tortoise. Some of Chinese media and internet users who are aware of this are telling the truth to incited people who demand Korea, but they don't really want to face the reality. Now, I would like to show you guys the comments that Chinese internet users have written because I think these unprocessed comments show the public sentiment bluntly. Let's get into it. If you go to YouTube or Naver, a Korean website, you can see that ordinary Koreans say that they made Chinese characters and the mandolins are theirs. Korean attracted people's attention with such bullshit and then listed Dano for their own. The Dano festival that Koreans say is totally different from our Dano festival. This is pathetic. Korea's Gangneung Dano festival and China's Dano festival are completely separated. Koreans don't even celebrate Kyuyuan and don't eat chops either. Well, yeah, Earth is made in Korean. I think Koreans distort the history for their own satisfaction. Confucius is Korean? Where the word Confucius is Korean? Naver or blogs don't have anything to do with it either. That's right. Chinese website or news report that Korean professor said one Chinese figure is actually Korean, but in fact, that professor wasn't exist at the first. These are the media's shameful responsibilities. Why should we really believe these things? My teacher said if Koreans think Confucius is Korean, that means they admit indirectly the nation was formerly a vassal state of China. KBS, the public broadcast, showed evidence that the Shandong Peninsula and the northeastern region were Korean territory on their documentary. Is it right? The reason that Koreans say Confucius is Korean and that the Chinese character originated in Korea is all starts from a word Eastern barbarians. You can find it out on the internet. The flag of South Korea was set during the Qing dynasty. That's why the British flag is in the Austrian flag. In the drama 대장금, they said that acupuncture and heating treatment were also invented by Korea. If you use Naver or other website in Korea, you can see how they explain the origin of it. Do Koreans not even take history classes? They believe that history drama are textbooks? Here another scammer is. In 대장금, there is a scene that they study acupuncture in the Imperial Naegyang, but they never said that Joseon dynasty invented it. It is absolutely not true that Koreans are obsessed with falsifying the history. You can find out by searching a mandolin in Korea website. Such arguments are neither academia nor the Korean government's position. It means that Koreans do not forge history. Y'all are being deceived now. So that is why people say that there is a problem with the Chinese people's view of history. Many people have translated Japanese articles related to anti-Korean and posted on websites. They feel some kinds of kinship and make themselves as a friend of them. There is no difference between Taiwanese demeaning Korea. Are you really willing to be a friend with such people? Xi Jinping said that Korean Peninsula was actually a part of China during the past US-China summit. That showed a distorted view of history. If you look at the level of a person representing a country, you can see the level of the people below it. It is understandable that so many people in China have been incited by fake news and made a slip. How unlucky Korea is. Has neither support nor position. The left side is a country with a wrong view of history, and the country on the right side have forgotten their own history. Thanks for watching. Have a happy day.